Hi, my name is Miriam Cutelis, and this is a slideshow that I originally made for a show I was having at Busboys and Poets alongside Abundance Baby on April 16th. But I also wanted to create a video so that other people can enjoy the talk, people that were not at the Busboys event. So I wanted to first show the work that was at Busboys. There was a total of 5 pieces that were at the Shirlington, Virginia location. So let's get started. Again, my name is Miriam Cutelis, and I was born in Flushing, Queens, and I am labeling this work, this presentation, Belonging, Worth, and Purpose. When I was 5, and I have an older sibling and a younger sibling, when I was 5, my family announced that we were moving to Paraguay, South America. And Paraguay is in the middle of South America. And we had a really good time there. Initially, it took a while to get used to it because we came from New York City, which is Flushing, Queens, and it's completely different world. We had chickens. My mom owned a restaurant in our own property. We did not have any like plumbing, indoor plumbing. So we had an outhouse. We had a mango tree. We had banana tree. We had water delivered through a horse-drawn carriage. So all those things are drastically different than having lived in New York. When I was 5, my parents announced they were getting divorced, and my older brother stayed with my dad, and my sister and I moved to New York with my mom. And starting this point, a significant split happened in my life in so many different ways. And so art became a way of answering some fundamental questions. One example of sort of the significant split, again, we had ended up back in New York City, and we had, like I said earlier, we had no indoor plumbing. We had a well and an outhouse, and the water was delivered in an horse-drawn carriage. So there were other differences too in the worlds. And when I say split, I mean there's drastic differences in the way life changed at this point. Another one was me going to public school in New York City. And at this point, we were all Spanish speaking at home. And so when I ended up starting school in 4th grade, I wasn't speaking English. So I had to learn English. And at that point, they called us ESL, English Second Language, I believe. And there was very little research about what is best practice. And these days, they wouldn't do this, but at that time in 1984-ish, we were not allowed to speak Spanish in school, especially if we were trying to learn English. They thought that that was one strategy to get us to learn the language faster. And the repercussions of that was that it was incredibly isolating, at least for the first 2 years, to be social and to feel like you're part of a community. We also lived in Jamaica, Queens when we moved back, and I'm not sure the people who are familiar with the area. We lived across the street from a strip joint, and we were latchkey kids. My mom worked 2 separate jobs, and my sister and I walked to school together from this location to our elementary by ourselves in the morning and came back home. So that alone was a huge change from what I would even do now with my kids. I have a 16-year-old and a 19-year-old, and I can't imagine sending my kids out at age 9 to walk alone without supervision in a neighborhood like this. So it was very different. Another significant split was that around the same time, my mom worked as a housekeeper, and in the summers, we would spend it in her employer's home in East Hampton, New York, and we would spend a lot of time in their employer's home in the city. And these obviously are very different locations. Again, a lot that split, being expected to exist in two completely different worlds. And I'm going to speak to that in a second. Another split was the differences in nature. In Paraguay, there was nature everywhere. There was, we were spending, I would say, 80% of our time outside. Indoors was just for sleeping, and I'm not sure what else. We pretty much just slept indoors, but most of the time we spent it outdoors. We even watched TV outdoors. We sometimes cooked outdoors. And so all of our time, or most of our time, was spent outdoors. And then when we moved to the city, it was pretty much you're inside, and there was very little nature. These are some images. I think this on the left is an earlier image, because it looks here like this image is they planted some trees. When I was going to this school, this is in Paraguay, the school, we would come in the morning. The school system was so that you would either go in the morning or in the afternoon. You wouldn't go the whole day. There was also this interesting kiosk, and this is a more recent photo, but when I was going there, the kiosk was only selling bread and breaded butter, or buttered bread, sorry, for 5 guaraníes. And I remember that very distinctly because I always wanted to get the heel of the bread, and it was the best snack you could ever get. And over here in this most recent photo, it looks like they have added more snacks to their menu. But when I was going there before 1983, that's what they were selling, buttered bread. And I forgot one thing. When you would come to school, there would be tons of brooms, and the students would be expected to sweep this area right here, the blacktop, I guess you would call it. And then when we moved back to New York, I went to, like I said, PS 117 in Queens, which is in Briarwood, which is the right next door to Jamaica. And it was, compared to my old school, it was a lot more poshy. We had a line for food and lunch and hot lunches, and we could choose, from a menu. Uh, the food I thought was phenomenal compared to the one option we had in Paraguay, the buttered bread. And high school, I attended a private school in Manhattan. And again, there was like such a drastic change. I feel very fortunate to have attended Marymount School of New York. And of course, it was an excellent, excellent place to learn. But also, it was again the expectation that the changes would just be absorbed. And I didn't think about it until much, much later, just how drastic these changes were. So coming from here to this. Again, the expectation was always to expertly navigate both worlds. And there are very, it's a very sort of cultural thing, to have that expectation, to just kind of absorb things and not really process them. And of course, there's some positives to being able to expertly navigate many worlds. I can be in one world and be fine, in another world and be fine. Those are great skills to pick up as a grown adult. But as a child, it was incredibly isolating because you grow up in an in-between space. And I feel like all of us grew up in between spaces in some ways or another. I'm not special there. But when you grow up in between spaces where you're expected to be one and another, and you're not quite sure where you land, you sort of figure out, you sort of think, who am I? And you have a few challenges trying to feel settled. So the body of work that I started working on began with identity and the need to sort of figure out how to feel more settled. I started um, I started thinking that I read this book called Born to Run in when I turned 40, and it inspired me to start running races. And I ran my first race, I think it was an 8K, and in Kensington, Maryland. It was like called the Muffin Run, and they gave you muffins at the end. And I was hooked, not because of the muffins, but because of this um, amazing, peaceful event and the sense of power that you gain from having finished a race was addictive. And so I started running marathons, half marathons, and then ultras. And then I had this idea of running a marathon in every state, and I've either run or walked a marathon distance, which is 26.2 miles in about 14 states at this point. And although I'm taking a break of a year, I am going to continue this hopefully till my old age. So this is one way that I started to um, address some of those issues about being settled and just like trying to figure out who I was and sort of feeling a sense of power and control. Um, the other side effect of running and training for runnings is just you get exposed to nature. So I started doing a lot of my trainings in the forest or in the trails near my home, specifically Burke Lake or Lake Accotink in Virginia, Northern Virginia. And so this is one such example of a work that I would have created, inspired by sort of my explorations in nature. My mom lives in Freeport, New York, and near Freeport, New York, there's this park called Norman Levy Park and Preserve. And Norman Levy is built on top of a landfill. And the park is gorgeous. And it started me thinking about worthiness and about self-worth. And it sort of mirrored expertly these struggles I was having with my own worth and thinking about who decides what gets tossed. As an art teacher, I'm privy to a lot of awesome materials that are headed to the trash, but they end up in my classroom and we make amazing things with them. So it's about perspective. It's about the decision maker. It's about, um, who decides what is worth, and the whole, just a lot of processing going on around the idea of worth, self-worth, decision makers of what is worthy, what is not worthy. So let me just give you a couple of examples of materials that I've used. So this piece right here was created using cardboard boxes and business cards. This one is 3 feet by 4 feet, and it was created using egg cartons and manila folders and Quaker oatmeal boxes. Um, and the Quaker oatmeals lend themselves beautifully to that sun up there. Um, when after making these, I realized that when you lit with extreme lighting from one direction, they almost look like drawings. So I'm incredibly obsessed with Van Gogh drawings more than his paintings or any other work of his. His drawings are dynamic and all the lines are really pull your eyes, and every single line in his work, in his drawings, really feel like a sense of movement. And I wanted to recreate that in a 3D format. So I started playing around with lighting, and these works under extreme one side lighting are fascinating to watch, to me. So I could look at these all day. I also used matches, cereal boxes, and here again, the oatmeal for this one. You could see the flowers on the left over here on the top left, where the matches really helped with that texture. Here's another view of that work. This one is created on a wooden board, and I would go to thrift stores and purchase, go to the painting section of a thrift store, and they will often have these already hardwared, hardware in the back, um, wooden frames that would have quotes on them. And those would be awesome for the work I do because it wouldn't warp. Another fundamental question that I started having was perfectly encapsulated by this book that I'm currently reading by Rand Eisler, and called The Power of Partnerships. And it was also inspired by, in the back of my head forever, by my parents' separation, and just thinking, I'm always, as a kid, this happens. And of course, divorce happens all the time. But as a kid, you're thinking, why can't just two people get along? Like, why can't just, and that stayed with me across the years, and I apply it all the time to even political affiliations. I'm like, why can't people just get along? That thought stayed with me. And so this quote from Power Partnerships perfectly encapsulates how I feel. Is cruelty, violence, and suffering in a world inevitable? Is there an alternative? What is it? And what can we do to get there? So my work started changing and started trying to answer this other question of sort of creating unity, finding one answer for a world that is decisively dualistic. I thought I wanted to go into politics, and I thought that was the way. I worked for then Congressman Schumer, and this was in 1983, as an intern, and that was not the answer. And then I thought I sort of delved into spirituality, Buddhism, meditation, and even though I pretty much dabble in all these, I still had my main faith was that all parties could find happiness and find a solution. So that, like, I always had faith that this is possible. And my work started showing that. And then I thought, okay, in my search for identity, and I think the right before the pandemic, these things, the ancestry testing started booming, and I kind of thought maybe I will, if I knew who I was, if I knew like where my ancestors came from, maybe that would sort of give me an idea of like more settledness in my identity. It didn't actually. It did make me feel connected to my immediate ancestors. This is my grandma and her dad on the right, and then this is my grandma and her husband, my grandpa, uh, on the bottom left. And what it did is it made me feel connected to them, but it also made me feel connected to humanity. If you look at this map, what you're seeing is movement of people across time. And what that means everyone's, these humans, hopes, fears, actions, non-actions, violence, all kinds of emotions over the years. This is going to be us in 100 years. We are going to be a color on a map. So I created We Are the People one, and I don't call it one. There's others afterwards, but this was the original one. And I'm going to show a quick video. As you guys know, I'm an art teacher. And as an art teacher, we often do self-portrait projects. And then there are these sets of skin tone colors that are sold in, bottles that are pre-mixed. And so I ordered that, and I decided I'm going to do a pour paint project, Pour, a pour paint project where you mix the paints with with uh, detergent. And what it does is it keeps the paints from mixing with other paints. And so the colors stay separate. And I wanted to mimic this idea of the ancestry test, where you get percentages of everything, and everyone is so incredibly unique. There's no one else out there with this exact percentage, this exact DNA. And I wanted to mimic that in my work. So I'm going, this is the way the piece looked before it dried, and it took many, many days to dry. And the faces are made out of hot glue, and they are melted into a mold. So I'm going to show you that process right now. And I'm going to start here. So here is the way that I put the liquid hot glue. That's my parrot in the background. And let's see. I think at some point in the video, I tell you how many of these I put in there. I'm going to turn off the volume so you can see, but so you can hear. So we poured, this is my daughter helping me. We poured the paints on the canvas, and then let's see if I can, we would pick it up and let the paint run through all the colors, and then we would let it dry. So there's a detergent and all the different colors. And again, I wanted to mimic how each and every one of these faces are incredibly unique, just like we are. And as a teacher and as an art teacher, to me, that's how I think about my students. Every single one of the students has their own unique voice. Okay, let me just move on. So that piece was about beauty, self-worth, and uniqueness. And who else would you be if not you? And around this time, another fundamental question started rising, and I wanted to start, I started thinking more about what would it take to create a world that works for everyone, and what part can I play in that? And one thing that we do around spiritual circles is when you are speaking, to always come from your own experience. So it did have me reflecting on, my identity as, an American, as a daughter of an immigrant. And I think around this time, being a citizen, or what America is or means, was a lot in the news, which is what sort of spurred these pieces. So this is We the People Too. These are some other examples. That's the next one they made in the series. These are some details. And again, what is an American? And I wanted to come to this answer from my own experience. This piece is called An Immigrant's Dream. So the value of citizenship. So I personally know 3 people that have gone through the citizenship process, probably more, but 3 people that I love and adore and are in my life. And one of them is my mom, and I witnessed her go through the process when I was younger. My stepdad, who is going through the process right now, and my uncle. And just to give you an idea how valuable and important this process is to everyone in my family. When I spoke to my uncle um, uh, about his citizenship when he finally got citizenship, he was incredibly emotional about it and just so excited um, about having become a U.S. citizen. So that is a very important thing for our family. I think back about my mom and what dreams she might have had growing up, wanting to. I absolutely love this picture of my mom in the corner here. She has a very determined expression in her face. These are on the bottom right is my mom and her family, her brothers and dad and sisters, and then that's her on top with her schoolmates. Um, but I go back to what her dreams must have been coming to America and um, you know, what were her dreams for us? And education does come to mind. Um, and one phrase that my mom used to utter quite often is no te falta nada. And that translates directly to uh, nothing is missing. You're not missing anything. And or you have everything you need. But that was a more direct translation. To me, and as a child, it translated to you have all the conditions that you need in order to succeed, and that makes me very emotional thinking about it because my mom did work very hard to provide all the conditions for us to succeed. It was also a call to action and a passing of a baton. So it was a call to action. It was saying, not to waste the opportunity because again, being a US citizen, coming to America, being an American, having access to great schools is, um, is a call to action. It's a call to um, do something with your life. So there's that. So we went on to do great things. Obviously, my I couldn't be prouder. My son is finishing off his first year in at UVA. My sister went to great colleges. I went to great colleges. So again, lots of effort and love and sacrifice to get us there, and that is part of the American dream. Another part is that you are in America, and yes, we don't have all the answers, and we haven't figured everything out. But one thing that we do have, and that would not be possible in Paraguay, is my sister, for example, she has transitioned a few years ago from male to female, and she's living her best life. So that makes me very happy to think that she can make her dreams come true and that that is possible here as an American. And then the ability to dream big and have, as a female, that is another opportunity that we have being Americans. And that might not be so easy had we stayed in Paraguay or South America, is the ability to dream big. And as a mother of a daughter, that is something that um, I feel very thankful for my mom's sacrifice to have brought us here so that my daughter could have these opportunities as well. So now more recently, I started doing a series called Grounded, and the Grounded series starts and trying to answer these fundamental questions more within. And that phrase that my mom used to utter, "No te falta nada," started taking on a different definition. It started ringing differently to me, and "No te falta nada," I'm going to adopt it, but I'm going to also um use it differently because now it means that all the answers are within. All the answers that you need are already programmed in your DNA, and all you have to do is look in. So right now, I have a show at Meadowlark Botanical Garden, and it's there until April 29th, and it's called From the Ground Up. So feel free to go. I have about 30, over 30 pieces in the show, and it does correlate with my Grounded series. Along with the Grounded series, I started to tune into myself a lot more and trust myself and working from a place of power and not trauma. And I think that is a very important thing that um, I started learning as I get older, as an older female. And I decided to become a healer, or a practitioner in a healing modality called cogno movement. And cogno movement is a more recent healing modality that um, works with your nervous system and small movements to harmonize both sides of your brain to help you become more settled and to get to neutral on so many things from anxiety to pain to grief and all the way up to cravings. So it is it is an incredible healing modality that um, I found at just the right time because it's allows me to turn any kind of trauma or any kind of anxiety that I might have currently and come to neutral. Um, so the next set of works, and I think part of the Grounded series, is trying to create a universal uh, visual language of healing, one that communicates belonging and worthiness, joy, awe, and grace. So a lot of these pieces, doing exactly that, trying to create a visual language of healing that anyone can look at and um, sort of walk away from a dualistic world and feel at one with all of humanity. My next body of work I know is going to revolve around the process of materializing ideas and creating. And it's going to pair well with um, what it is to be a woman. So the idea is how we turn ideas into creation and that process. So the next body of work is going to be about the process, and it mirrors well what I do also in my practitionership with cognitive movement. So to close, I want to have a few fundamental answers because I don't have all the answers. None of us do. And perhaps if we work in partnerships, we can um, put our answers together. But for right now, I have a few answers. One is that any answer that weakens us and disempowers us are not the answer. So we do need our bodies to know this. We do need to connect with our bodies, and we do need to know how to sense how these feelings feel within our body. So anything that weakens us and makes us feel less powerful um, is not the answer. And again, we can use our bodies as tools to assess anything from health decisions to relationships to all kinds of decisions. Next, everything is energy. Energy matters. Pay attention to energy. Um, if something weakens you again, that's not the answer. If a relationship with someone makes you feel a certain way that doesn't feel positive or joyful, pay attention to it. It's important. There's a reason we have these bodies. Um, Next, love is the strongest element in the world, in the universe. And this is a graphic I created for a t-shirt. Um, and we are much more powerful than we think we are. This is one of my favorite photos. It is me at age 40. I had just rediscovered running after having not done it for many years. And this was me about an hour before I finished my first ever long race and my first ever 50K. So that was my first long race, was a 50K. And it was in Circleville, West Virginia, and it was called the Trilogy. And I love this picture because it just makes me realize that we are much more powerful than we think we are. Maybe a year before that, a friend of mine invited me to train for a half marathon, and I responded to him saying, "There's no way I could ever run 13 miles." And so then I read this book, like I said, that inspired me to start running, called Born to Run by Christopher McDougall. And I was on fire. And so it's great proof to show that we are much more powerful than we think we are. And that we have complete control of what we do with ourselves. Next, we are meant to find joy, and joy is our birthright. If we are not there, then that is your purpose. There you have your purpose. And anger, hatred, jealousy, violence, and fear are not part of the answer. So again, this would require you to assess within your body and find out if there's any of these feelings inside. Do you have anger? Are you holding on to hatred? Are you jealous? Do you feel violent? Are you afraid? Those things um, should not be in your body if you are trying to answer life's big questions. So if those are there, then that is our job. That is what we need to be doing. So parent yourself with love. That's another graphic I made for a t-shirt. And last, dare to dream big. Um, it will never ever manifest. Nothing amazing will ever manifest on accident. You do have to go through this process that I spelled out here. You have to have the idea, you have to think about it, you must start talking about it, you have to feel it. What would it feel like to follow through? You start acting like it, and then it will create and materialize in your life. So dare to dream big, because if you don't dream it, no one else is going to provide you with those big dreams. And if you want to see more of my work, you can go to my website, cutelisart.com. If you want to have me do a cognitive movement session with you online or in person, you can go to my website, miriamscogno.blogspot.com. Thank you so much.